The Ukrainian army has invaded the Kursk Oblast of Russia, a situation that has taken both Russia and the Western world by surprise. And British media pointed out that this surprise attack by Ukraine has also put US President Joe Biden in a predicament. The BBC published an article titled "Ukraine's Surprise Incursion into Russia Leaves Biden in a Quandary" on August 15. The article stated that as the scale of Zelensky's bold gamble becomes apparent, Washington is digesting the impact of Ukraine's lightning strike on the Kursk region of Russia. U.S. officials are assessing how this invasion might reshape the political and military posture of the war, and its implications for Washington's long-standing stance on the use of US-supplied weapons in Ukraine. This shocking raid took both Russian and Western leaders off guard, highlighting one of the most dangerous dilemmas facing the Western-backed Ukrainian defense. President Biden has been trying to authorize Kyiv to repel the Russian invasion without the risk of escalating U.S. relations with Moscow. President Putin has always tried to portray this conflict as a war between Russia and the West. But Biden has sought to clearly limit U.S. policy to undermine this claim and avoid escalation of the conflict. However, Ukraine's offensive on Kursk, which military analysts say is the largest incursion into Russia by a foreign army since World War II, has presented the White House with a series of urgent questions. Will this prompt Washington to quickly impose greater restrictions on Ukraine's use of US and NATO weapons systems? Has it crossed Russia's red line, that is, the West must not get involved in the conflict? If not, is President Zelensky showing Washington that he can expose Putin's bluff? Despite the risks and uncertainties, some in Washington have an unexpected admiration for Zelensky's move. Integrating the remarks of U.S. officials over the past week gives a more or less clear indication of the emerging U.S. position. The Biden administration insists that Ukraine did not give the U.S. advance notice of the attack. White House spokeswoman Jean-Pierre said Washington had nothing to do with it. As for the use of U.S. weapons, spokespersons for the White House, the Pentagon and the State Department would not formally confirm whether U.S. weapons were used. But given Ukraine's reliance on U.S. and NATO weapons systems, it seems very clear that they did. Vladislav Selezny, a former spokesperson for the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, told Voice of America that the US-provided HIMARS systems were crucial to this offensive. The US's tacit consent for Ukraine to use its weapons in the Kursk attack is undoubtedly suggestive. Pentagon spokesman Major General Patrick Ryder said this week, "Our assessment is that they are acting within the policies we have set. Our policies have not changed, particularly regarding the use of U.S. weapons by Ukraine." Officials said the attack was from the beginning in line with U.S. policy that Ukraine must be able to defend against attacks from across the border. But Pentagon spokeswoman Sabrina Singh added, "Again, we do not support long-range attacks against Russia. The United States, as Ukraine's largest single weapons supplier, has the most significant impact on Ukraine's prospects through its relationship with Ukraine." Just last week, the Pentagon approved the 63rd batch of equipment in 3 years, covering Stinger missiles and artillery shells. However, since the Russian invasion began, President Biden's approach has been characterized by initially refusing to provide more advanced weapons, including HIMARS systems, Patriot missile defense systems and F-16 fighter jets, and then changing his mind. The White House's policy regarding Ukraine's invasion of Russian territory is the same. For months, Zelensky has been asking for permission to strike military targets inside Russia that facilitate Russia's attacks on Ukraine. In May this year, Biden finally authorized the use of U.S. weapons to cross the border and strike Russia, but only within a limited distance in Kharkiv. The White House referred to the allowed actions by Ukraine as counterattack measures. Biden claimed in June this year, when Russian military bases on the other side of the border are used to attack specific targets inside Ukraine, Ukraine is authorized to carry out strikes near the border. But we have not authorized strikes more than 200 miles inside Russia. And we have not authorized strikes on Moscow and the Kremlin. A few weeks later, the same strike permission was extended to any point on the border where Russian troops were used to attack Ukraine after that. Zelensky, along with some European allies and some Democrats in Washington, urged the United States to further lift restrictions on Ukraine. Specifically, the Ukrainian leader expected to be able to use provided ATACMS or long-range missiles to launch deep into Russia to destroy unmanned aircraft and missile launch sites. But Washington refused. Overarching all these decisions is the warning previously issued by President Putin, who once threatened that if Russia's territorial integrity is threatened, he will use all available means. In addition, if he believes that the West poses an intolerable threat to Russia through the war in Ukraine, he may use nuclear weapons. Ultimately, Biden's position can be summed up as, Ukraine can decide how best to use U.S. weapons to protect itself, including cross-border strikes. But there are very clear restrictions, including not using long-range missiles. He said in June that Ukraine's strike targets were limited to near the border. Ukraine's Kursk offensive has brought the US's predicament to an unexpected situation, both literally and figuratively. This Ukrainian invasion was a cross-border ground attack involving between 5,000 and 12,000 soldiers, according to reports. Some unconfirmed Russian reports claim that its forces may have advanced 30 kilometers into Russian territory. As of midweek, KYIV said its forces have taken control of 1,000 square kilometers of Russian territory, including more than 70 villages and towns, and captured hundreds of prisoners of war. Russian officials said about 130 to 1,000 people have been evacuated from their homes. Because U.S. officials are still reluctant to talk publicly about any details of the matter, the impression is that they are still exploring what this means for the battlefield situation, the future of the war, and how it affects Putin's considerations. If Zelensky is frustrated by Biden's excessive caution or slow decision-making on the issue of weapons authorization, then he may be trying to show Biden that he can force both Biden and Putin to show their cards. This is undoubtedly a bold gamble. 10 days have passed since the cross-border strike operation, and the Ukrainian army claims to have occupied Suja. But Russia does not recognize it in the blink of an eye. It has been 10 days since the cross-border operation of the Ukrainian army, and the Ukrainian army continues to advance in the Kursk region. The commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian army, Serhiy Syrskyi, pointed out on August 15 that the Ukrainian army has advanced a total of 35 kilometers deep in the Kursk Oblast and controlled 150 square kilometers of Russian territory. Due to the contraction and strengthening of the Russian army's defense line, the progress of the Ukrainian army is no longer as rapid as in the early stages of the offensive. In the past day, the Ukrainian army said it has advanced only 0.5 to 1.5 kilometers, but has occupied 82 settlements in total over several days. The combat map released by the U.S. Institute for the Study of War shows that the progress of the Ukrainian army in the Kursk Oblast has not been significant in the past 3 days. According to Ukrainian President Zelensky, the Ukrainian army has established a military commander's office in Suja, Kursk Oblast, to maintain order and meet the needs of residents in the Ukrainian-controlled area. This office is headed by Major General Edward Moskolyov of the Army, who was once the commander of the Counter-Terrorism Operation Zone, which refers to the Donetsk Oblast and Luhansk Oblast controlled by the Russian Army and pro-Russian armed forces. The Ukrainian Army Major General Edward Moskolyov has rich combat experience in the Donbas region. Suja is located in Russia, about 9.6 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. Although the population here is less than 5,000, two railways and a highway intersect here. There is also an important target near Suja. That is, the terminal station of the Russian gas pipeline. After the gas is transported here, it will then enter Ukraine and then reach other European countries. However, since the Ukrainian army captured Suja, there have been no reports of any disruption to the delivery of natural gas to Europe if what Zelensky said is true. Suja would be the largest settlement in Russia that the Ukrainian army has captured so far. However, although it has convenient transportation, it is not a logistical stronghold because it is too close to Ukraine. The political value of the Ukrainian army's capture of this place far exceeds its military value among the Ukrainian army's armored vehicles in Suja. The yellow one is a Humvee provided by the United States in addition. According to the Ukrainian side, the number of Russian soldiers who surrendered that it received in one operation set the highest record. Since the war began, 100 Russian soldiers were captured. This batch of Russian soldiers was captured in a large underground facility on August 14 and they had sufficient ammunition and supplies at that time. Russia has not responded to this for the time being. Zelensky said that they would eventually be used to exchange for Ukrainian prisoners of war. Russia did not immediately respond to Zelensky's claim of capturing Suja, but Deputy Director of the Military Political Directorate of the Russian Defense Ministry and Commander of the Chechen National Guard, Ayla in November, said in an earlier interview that there are Russian troops in Suja, and the enemy does not control the city. Conflicts occur there every day. He also said that Russia will not negotiate with Ukraine, and the enemy may want to issue an ultimatum to Russia after the operation in the Kursk region. Ayla in November also said that many of the 12,000 cross-border Ukrainian troops were mercenaries. Polish, English and French could be heard everywhere, but most of them have been eliminated. The Russian Defense Ministry pointed out on August 14th that the Ukrainian army lost 170 people and 16 armored vehicles on that day, and the Ukrainian army has lost a total of 2,300 people so far. In the list of armored vehicles lost in the past day, it includes 2 tanks and 1 U.S. Stryker 8-wheel armored vehicle. The Russian army regards the destruction of the US's main wheeled armored vehicle as a morale-boosting achievement. And since August 6th, Russia has evacuated nearly 200,000 people from the border area. John Kirby, a spokesman for the U.S. National Security Council, said during a phone briefing with reporters on August 15th that the United States has observed that some Russian troops are being redeployed from combat operations in and around Ukraine to the Kursk region. The Russian army launched an attack in the direction of Kursk, Donetsk Oblast. Meanwhile, the fighting in eastern Ukraine continues. The Russian army has advanced to less than 10 kilometers from Kursk, Donetsk Oblast. The local government head, Serhiy Dobryak, urged residents to evacuate and said that is an important logistics hub in the region. The situation in this city will only get worse. The mayor of Sevastopol said that a Ukrainian drone was shot down and traffic on the Crimean bridge was suspended. According to CCTV News, the mayor of Sevastopol wrote on social media in the early hours of the 16th local time that the local air defense forces and the Black Sea Fleet of the Russian Navy repelled the attack by the Ukrainian army. Preliminary information shows that 3 Ukrainian drones were shot down, and no casualties or property damage were caused by this attack. The management department of the Crimean bridge released news in the early hours of the 16th that traffic on the bridge was suspended, according to another report by Ukrainian media. Between the night of the 15th and the early morning of the 16th local time, there were multiple sounds of explosions in several places in the Crimea region, and fires broke out near Kursk. Kursk offensive may lead to the end of Ukraine's military power. On August 13th, Serhiy Syrskyi, the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, reported to Ukrainian President Zelensky that the Ukrainian army had controlled another 40 square kilometers of territory in the Kursk region in the past 24 hours. And the Ukrainian army has controlled about 1,000 square kilometers of Russian territory. The Ukrainian army's T-72 main battle tank deployed to Sumy Oblast, however. The website of the Austrian Armed Forces pointed out that the success of the Ukrainian army in the Kursk direction was largely the result of psychological warfare. The Ukrainian army first sent multiple small teams to infiltrate towns and villages in the depth of the Kursk Oblast, posted videos and photos, and claimed to have occupied these areas, thereby sending the message to the Russian army that the Ukrainian army is expanding and consolidating control of the occupied towns. This strategy was intended to imitate the successful experience of the Ukrainian army's counteroffensive in the Kharkiv direction in September 2022. At that time, Russian soldiers fell into panic and voluntarily retreated because they thought their rear was cut off, and they might be surrounded. Photos on social media show that the Ukrainian army also achieved this effect by forging photos of occupying the rear of the Russian army and other means. However, the report believes that this strategy is only effective within the first 72 hours of the surprise attack. Now the time window has passed. The Russian army is integrating, and there are constantly reinforcement troops arriving. He also said that the current offensive of Russia in Donbas is becoming more and more fierce, and Ukraine seems to be able to defend with difficulty only. For this reason, Western military experts have also issued a warning. The frontline Ukrainian troops are already very tired, and they are urgently looking forward to the rotation of new troops. However, these troops have been deployed to Kursk. Grizel gave an exact warning about the current situation. The offensive in Kursk may lead to the end of Ukraine's military power. In addition, according to the German Die Zeit, the Ukrainian army not only encounters logistical problems in Kursk, but also faces increasingly severe challenges in key communications. It is reported that the current Ukrainian army mainly relies on SpaceX's Starlink-K internet satellite communication terminals to achieve communication and liaison. However, SpaceX prohibits providing services in Russia, which has caused serious obstacles to the communication of the Ukrainian army that goes deep into Kursk. The report pointed out, Starlink-K can no longer function, although the Ukrainian army can use traditional radios to maintain liaison. This will make them extremely vulnerable to being eavesdropped and tracked by the Russian army through electronic reconnaissance means. This situation has led to the Ukrainian army's very limited grasp of the situation on the front line.